In just 10 weeks, Congress kills the loan program that built modern law school. And if you haven't heard about it, you're not alone. The schools haven't exactly been advertising this. Here's what they're not telling you. After July 1st, law school splits in two. A handful of law schools come out of this fine, but most of them don't. And which side of the split you end up on is being decided right now before you've even hit submit on your application. I've been doing this for over 20 years now. Let me walk you through how we got here, what's actually about to happen, and what you can do about it. In 1985, private law school cost about $7,500 a year, 23 grand in today's money. Public school was way cheaper. Some state schools you could attend for $2,000 or $3,000 a year all in. Here's what that meant in practice. You worked summers at a law firm, you covered most of it, and you walked out with a loan that you could actually pay off on a normal lawyer's salary. I'm not talking big law here. I'm talking about your county prosecutor making 50 grand a year, or your neighborhood real estate attorney, or a first-year public defender. Those people could service their loans on those salaries. The math worked out. But 1987 is the year it all broke. And the person who broke it was a journalist named Bob Morse, who worked at US News and World Report. He decided to start ranking law schools. And nobody cared at first. The first ranking ran in 1987, and most law schools just ignored it. 10 years later, those same law schools were restructuring their entire admissions and financial aid operations around it, because the deans had figured out something. The rankings had specific inputs they could game. Input number one, LSAT medians. To keep your LSAT medians up, law schools need a critical mass of applicants above that number, and so schools started handing out big scholarships to high LSAT applicants. Didn't matter if those applicants came from rich families, didn't matter if they personally needed the money, the median had to stay up. Meanwhile, the lower scoring applicants, often the ones from working class backgrounds, often the ones the school's diversity statements claim to serve, those students paid full sticker price to subsidize the rich kids. And I'm not exaggerating here, you could pull up the data yourself. Look at any law school's LSAT medians, then look up their merit scholarship recipients. You'll see the same pattern in every single one. The kid with the 172 whose parents are surgeons could get a full ride. The kid with the 158 whose parents clean offices might pay for that full ride. The second input is GPA medians. So admissions started favoring applicants from easy grading majors over applicants with harder resumes. So a 3.9 in communications could get you in, whereas a 3.4 in mechanical engineering from MIT, you could be waitlisted. The school doesn't care if the engineer is more qualified, the school cares about their median. Input number three is employment numbers 9 months out from graduation. That's what the ABA tracks. And so schools started hiring their own unemployed graduates into 9-month research fellowships, timed to the reporting window, which is employed at graduation. 9 months unemployed, and 1 day later, after that, that's what matters. And so this is actually what the ABA cracked down on in 2011, but the schools just got more sophisticated about it. Input number four is expenditures per student. The more you spend, the higher you rank. So schools jacked up their tuition just to have more money to spend, which raised their ranking, which in turn justified more tuition hikes. That is a flywheel running on debt. Then in November 2022, Yale Law School pulled out of the US News rankings. Harvard followed within 48 hours. Then Stanford, Berkeley, Columbia, Georgetown, and Michigan all pulled out as well. Within a month, basically every top law school had announced they were, quote unquote, boycotting the rankings. The deans went on op-eds and wrote podcasts talking about how the rankings had corrupted legal education and were taking a stand on principle. But then 6 months later, they quietly kept submitting their data to US News, because the alternative was to drop in the rankings and lose applicants. Even the schools that publicly called the game broken couldn't actually stop playing it. Every incentive got twisted. Which brings us to where we are today. The average law student graduates with about $130,000 in debt from law school alone. Add an undergrad, you're looking at $140,000. A growing share are over $200,000. The most expensive private schools like Columbia and NYU, their grads come out with $250,000 to $300,000 in debt in some cases, and all of that money comes from one federal loan program called Grad Plus. Grad Plus has no cap. A school can charge whatever it wants because the government will lend whatever it takes. There is no real credit check, no income test, no analysis of whether you will ever pay it back. You sign a master promissory note, and the money shows up in the school's bank account. That's why tuition skyrocketed. Not a coincidence that Grad Plus got expanded in 2006 and law school tuition started climbing 6, 7, 8% a year for the next decade. Those numbers aren't connected by accident. So here is the situation at Columbia right now. Their tuition is $88,000 a year, living expenses in New York, at least another $35,000 a year, plus interest, which starts accruing the day you borrow. That's another $25,000 over the course of 3 years. And so you walk out of Columbia 3 years later with $440,000 in debt potentially, the government writing the check the whole time, no questions asked. Now, Columbia grads land a big law at a pretty high rate. Roughly 3/4 of the class goes into firms paying $225,000 a year. So the math works for them. It's tough, but it works. But if you go way down in the rankings, look 150 schools down in the rankings, I'm not going to name names because lawyers love to sue, but you could pull up any law school's 509 report. That's a public document that the ABA publishes, and you'll see what I'm talking about here. You got schools charging $55,000, $60,000, $65,000 a year for a 3-year degree, then placing 30% of their class into jobs paying below $70,000. Another 20% go into jobs that don't even require a law degree at all. And some of these schools have first-time bar passage rates below 60% with the same loan program. Now, new lawyer salaries don't follow a standard distribution. It's not a normal bell curve. They form what's called a bimodal curve with 2 different peaks, almost nothing in between. The NALP publishes the data every year. The right peak is big law at $225,000 a year. That's a pretty small slice of the class, being given mostly to T14 graduates plus top of strong regional programs. The left peak is under $100,000, maybe between $65,000 to $100,000. That's roughly half of all reported salaries. So the theoretical middle-class lawyer job, the one you imagine when you think lawyer, that career path basically ended in the 2008 recession and never came back. And so you can run the numbers here. If you borrow $200,000 to earn $80,000, your monthly loan payment under standard repayment is around $2,200 a month. That's more than rent in a lot of cities, and you're paying it for 10 years. Or you go on income-driven repayment, which lowers the monthly bite, but adds tens of thousands in interest. And that's over the entire life of your loan. But either way, the math isn't working out in your favor. And everybody gets paid and you get the bill. Now, we can look at when this took into effect, the loan changes. Starting July 4th of last year, Congress passed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. It's a sprawling piece of legislation, but buried in the higher education section is the provision ending the Grad Plus lending for everybody, cutting off July 1st, about 2 months from now. Starting July 1st, no new graduate or professional student can borrow more than $50,000 a year in federal loans with a $200,000 lifetime cap. Medical school gets a narrow exception, but law school doesn't. So if you look at the math at a school charging $65,000 a year in tuition plus $20,000 in living expenses, you need $85,000 a year to attend. Federal loans give you $50,000, and so there's a $35,000 gap per year for 3 years, meaning you need $105,000 in private loans on top of $150,000 in federal debt to get through. And private student loans are a different animal than public government loans. They want a cosigner, they run hard credit checks, and they charge higher interest, and they don't qualify for income-driven repayment or public service loan forgiveness. And so if you're taking on 6 figures in private student debt for law school, you're basically signing a financial life sentence with no way out, no bankruptcy escape or anything like that. And so the schools that can't justify paying sticker have nowhere to hide. They can't keep raising tuition because the blank check is gone. They've either got to drop the price, beef up their merit aid, or watch their applications collapse. And so, like I said, law school is splitting in 2. On the one hand, you got the top schools, the Harvard, the Yale, Stanford, all the other T14, the strong regional schools that have pretty good outcomes. These schools get more valuable after Grad Plus dies, not less, because with federal money capped, fewer students can afford to pay sticker, and so the seats at schools that lead to actual big law outcomes become more scarce, become more competitive, and become more unique if you can be a graduate of one of those schools. On the other hand, the schools at the bottom of half of the rankings, those schools, the ROI just doesn't make sense, and people can't even take out the loans to go there in the first place. And so some of those are going to close, some are going to merge, Some will dramatically cut their tuitions to survive. You don't want to end up at those schools regardless. Or if you did, you don't want to pay sticker. You don't want to pay anything for those.